morning. Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and joining me are my co-hosts, CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Capital Markets, Lawrence Lewitinn, and Managing Director of International Content, Emily Parker. Good morning, you two. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good. Have some anything to digitize into art, Lawrence? Anything in the basement? Just keep looking for it.
At this point, I'm ready to digitize my daughter's finger paintings. I got to jump in on it as fast as possible.
I would do it. Do it as fast as
at least she might be able to afford a semester of tuition. Yeah, exactly.
All right, checking in on Bitcoin right now. The XBX Bitcoin price trading at $55,612. It's down about 2.4% over the past 24 hours. And the ETX Ether price right now trading at, let's take a look. I don't have it on me just off the bat. 1742. According to TradeBlock data, the most reliable reference price for institutions since 2014, with billions in assets under management benchmarked against it. So, Lawrence, we see a bit of a pullback today. What's going on in the markets?
Yeah, we're still keeping an eye on the 10-year yield on interest rates. We're right now around 1.6% on the 10-year yield. But when you look at it, the market is still relatively bullish in the way it's positioned for the intermediate term. But we can't let the day go by without remembering that today is the 1-year anniversary of the bottom of the market last year, when it was in the high 3,000s. And we couldn't predict what this past year would have brought. We can't predict what this upcoming year is going to bring. So, if you're looking at it, you're saying, if you're a long-term holder, you're saying, well, 5,000 or 50,000 doesn't matter. 500,000, 5 million, that's where you're aiming for. And if you're dabbling in it and what have you, you're not going to try and pick the tops or bottoms. Your best bet, dollar cost averaging.
Crazy. Yeah. You bought it 1 year ago at 3,000. Right now it's 55.
Very few people got there. Very few people got that price. So don't make anybody else feel bad about it,
All right. Emily, also from yesterday, we heard from Binance CEO CZ. He said that he was going to have a special announcement. Do we know what that special announcement is? I don't suppose it had anything to do with the investigation with the CFTC, but what was it?
Yeah, so there's been some interesting news on Binance since CZ appeared on the show. Most notably, the CFTC is reportedly investigating Binance for letting U.S. customers use derivatives. In other words, it sounds a lot like what's happening with BitMEX. But that was not the announcement that CZ was teasing. CZ was referring to an announcement that former U.S. Senator and former U.S. Ambassador to China would be advising on regulatory matters for Binance. So I don't know if there's any relationship between these two news items, but a lot has happened in Binance world since CZ was on First Mover yesterday.
Right. Well, he's hired someone to help him on the regulatory front. Perhaps that will go
Sounds like he needs that. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Looking at our top story, Christies auctioned off a non-fungible token for a dizzying $69.3 million Thursday. It has the art world abuzz and many people scratching their heads. Joining us now is Beeple, the graphic artist behind the record-smashing NFT. Welcome, Beeple.
Hey,
welcome to the show.
Hey, how we doing? How's everybody doing this morning? I'm doing pretty good.
No one is as good as you right now.
No, you guys are definitely not doing as good as me. You're definitely doing way crappier than me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely it has been quite interesting. That was a lot. That was a lot. Yeah.
What was your reaction when you saw the closing bid?
So we were like watching it in like our living room, and there was like 2 film crews, like filming us, and I was on like a clubhouse with like a couple thousand people. And so it was quite public, to be quite honest. But because the way it sort of went, it was at like 25 million, and then it jumped to 50 million, and people in the clubhouse were saying 50. And I thought that we all thought they were kidding. And then it was like, then the screen refreshed and it was at 50, and it was like, oh my God. Just like ran away. I was just like, oh my God, this is insane. It was just like, yeah, I don't even know.
This piece of work began when you began creating a picture every day and posting it online for over 10 years. And this NFT is a collection of the first 5,000 days, which is over 10 years of work, correct?
Yeah, so I started the Everydays in May 1st, 2007, and just finished the 5,000th day on January 7th, 2021. I'm still doing it, but the 5,000th day was 2 months ago. So yeah, it is literally a picture that I've been working on over 13 years.
Do you think that is worth $69 million?
13 years of work? I don't know. I mean, it's one of these things. It's the market decides this stuff. I have no idea what it's worth. It's worth whatever people will pay for it.
So there's been some kind of like snarkiness in the mainstream media, referring to this as like the most expensive JPEG in history. And then, people saying like, well, what are you actually getting here? You can't hang it on your wall. Like, basically, there's a lot of people who don't really get this at all. And what is your response to those critics?
I mean, it is a very new concept, and it is the most expensive JPEG in history. So they are right about that. I think it's one of these things that it's going to take a while for people to sort of wrap their heads around this idea of sort of digital ownership. But I think it's honestly, no different than a lot of crypto stuff, where it's sort of like, well, what is it? It's well, what is Bitcoin? You could say this about a lot of this stuff, but I think people will come around to it, and I think they'll see that it's no different than owning, a bunch of different things. I mean, look at like a baseball card. Well, what gives that value? It's just a little piece of cardboard. We assign value to things that don't inherently have value all the time. It's just, it takes a while to accept them, I think, sometimes.
Are there specific rights that you do give the owners, or that you gave the owner, the buyer of this? Besides it being a very, very, very expensive autographed baseball card, can they break it up into pieces? Can they break up the collage and sell the individual? Like, what kind of things are you giving the owners here?
So there is things that are possible like that with, and some of my past pieces have actually been fractionalized. That I sold previously. So that is one of the things that is, exciting about NFTs, that there is really a bunch of different things that you can do with this stuff. So I think, in terms of the specific rights, they don't own the copyright to the work, but they own the right to sort of like show the work. And I think it's also one of these things where I'm going to sort of work with the collector to display this stuff in the real world, because as much as they bought, just a JPEG, we have to view it in the real world somehow, whether that's a computer screen or, a phone or something like that. So I'm interested in how to make these things, really cool displays in the real world. That's what I've been working on with like the last drop. You can see the displays there. And so for this piece, it's kind of one of these things where, how do you want to display it? Like, I can make a big print for your house. We can project it on the side of a building for Art Basel. Like, that's the advantage, I think, of digital work, is it can take a bunch of different forms versus a painting. It's just a painting, and like, that's it. It's never going to be anything different than that.
Have you been in touch with the owner? Do you know who it is?
I do know who it is. It will be announced quite soon.
Oh, interesting. So, what do you plan to do with all this money?
I plan to reinvest it in the artwork itself and making bigger and cooler sort of art projects that, take more time and resources like this. I really look honestly at the people who are, collecting this work as investors. It's one of these things where the money at this point is far beyond just like, well, I'm just buying it just because I like it. It's a pretty picture. Like, to me, it's sort of like, I look at this as an investment, and I want to see those people get a return on their investment. It's good for them, and it's good for me if their artwork goes up in value. So I definitely am going to take this money and use it to reinvest in bigger and cooler projects.
So you
just quick follow up on that. Are you? Sorry, just really quick follow up.
One at a time. Okay,
a lot of questions. A lot of questions.
Green on blue.
Just really quick follow up. What about the ETH? Are you going to keep some of that? Because my understanding is that this sale was conducted entirely in Ether. Are you going to keep some of this in Ether? Are you going to sell it, or I mean, I'm sure like Ethereum watchers are wondering what this means for Ether.
Yeah, I probably will keep a percentage of it in Ether. I don't know that I'll keep all of it in Ether. How much of that? I'm going to be honest, I haven't really given it that much thought. I probably should, though. I probably should give that more thought.
Getting back to what you were saying.
Journey. What did crypto find you, or did you find crypto? How did that crypto journey evolve?
Sure. I mean, I've always sort of known of it. I have a computer science degree, so I'm not a programmer by any means, but like just the technology piece of it, I find absolutely fascinating. And so I've known about it from, quite early. But I didn't really buy any until 2017. I bought a little Ethereum, just like everybody else did in 2017, and kind of saw it go up, saw it go down, and then honestly never really gave crypto like a thought until quite recently. About mid-October, people kept hitting me up and being sort of like, you got to look at NFTs, you got to look at NFTs. And so when I finally did, it was just like, oh man, this is like absolutely insane. This is just like, it has such a huge potential to be a very transformative, technology. And so I was really all in, since October.
But do you think this is just a fad, like the ICOs, like the GameStop phenomenon we saw earlier this year?
Sure. I think it's a bubble. I do think there is a bubble. And I think where we are at in that bubble, or if it's not a bubble now, I do believe it probably will be a bubble at some point because there's just so many people rushing into the space. But I look at it sort of the technology behind it is so simple. It's just proving ownership of something backed by the blockchain. And so it can be applied to so many different things outside of digital art. I really look at this as something that could be a very viable alternate asset class. And so I think, could be a bubble, just like with the internet. There was a big bubble. Everybody was super, super hyped about it. But it didn't kill the internet when the bubble popped. It just kind of wiped out all the crap. And so I honestly think that's what's going to happen with this. It's going to take all of the things that are just hype and like not real projects, and those will go to zero. But it's not going to kill this technology because the technology, I think, is sort of simple enough and strong enough to survive any sort of, crazy, irrational exuberance.
You sought out art collectors prior to the auction. What advice did they give you, and how much did that help with the actual pricing down to yesterday?
I mean, I sort of have talked to a bunch of collectors in the space, but it went at auction, so it's sort of like I have no control over the price. And the estimate, there was no estimate. It started at $100. So really the price was how much, sort of people wanted it.
Did you have an expectation of where that price was going to go, or did you?
Everybody tried to get me to make an expectation on that, and I never did, and I never will. I don't want because then I think it makes it seem like I think it should go for that, and I don't want to give people the impression that I think it should go for that. I've actually never priced any of my work more than $969, and so. If everybody else wants to say it's worth $70 million, I'll gladly agree with you, but I didn't say that. You guys
did. So do you think that NFTs will really democratize the art world, or do you kind of see like it's going to go the way that the art world already is, where kind of like, the big artists and the big auction houses and the big collectors are going to eventually just start dominating this world as well?
To be quite honest, I do not think it will democratize the art world that much. I think it's one of these things where everybody kind of has access to it. In a way it will, but it's sort of like the internet. Did the internet democratize everything? Kind of. I don't, maybe yes and no in ways. But everybody will have access to this. So, people who are very sort of, kind of low on the totem pole will have access to it, and people who are the big, huge players will have access to it. So when everybody has access to it, I'm not sure that it's going to sort of, democratize this. I think there will still be gatekeepers like Christies and Sotheby's and, galleries and even some of the platforms. Most of the platforms or at least some of the more popular platforms are kind of closed. You can't, not anybody can release on them. So I'm not 100% sure how much it will democratize things, to be honest.
So you're one of the few living artists to ever get this kind of a sale. Besides, of course, elation. Wow, there you go. So, besides, of course, happiness, how does it feel as an artist? With all that's going on in the world, I mean, do you feel, is there guilt? Do you feel happy about what's the potential for other artists? And of course, how are you handling some of the emotional fallout from it all?
It's definitely been a lot. And especially this whole, even since I've come to NFTs, it's been a lot because I was a very popular digital artist. And to be honest, I made a good living. I had a couple million followers on Instagram before this. I was, a very, very popular sort of artist and was doing, visuals for the Super Bowl and Louis Vuitton, collaborations and stuff. So, this is definitely a much bigger level of sort of attention and sort of, compensation for my work though. But I also know that I'm going to give back with this work. So the money doesn't really bother me. I know that I was not making this work for the money. So it's one of these things where I'm going to do, a bunch of good with this. And so that piece of it doesn't really bother me. And another thing that I have been doing since coming into this space is doing a bunch of $1 drops where I'll basically do an edition of 100 for $1. And those immediately shoot up to $100,000. And then whoever buys that for $1 can resell it for $100,000 and they keep 90% of that. So I've been doing these sort of kind of giveaway drops, periodically, and I will definitely continue to do that.
I wonder, where does the name Beeple come from? And you also tweeted a pixelated photo of Mona Lisa writing the next chapter. What is the next chapter?
So I see this is where Beeple comes from. It's this fuzzy, it's a fuzzy Ewok looking thing from the 80s that this is a Beeple. This was something I named myself literally 20 years ago. So I see the next chapter as being digital art. I think there was no way to collect digital art before, and so it was largely ignored for good reason by the traditional art markets because they really had no way to actually collect it sort of in a truly sort of native fashion. So I think you're going to see an explosion of interest in this stuff. I think you're also going to see people looking back over the last 20 years because, again, digital art has been made for the last 20 years. And so I think you're going to see people sort of looking back over the history of this stuff now and sort of dissecting it with sort of fresh eyes in terms of, what happened and sort of, where are we at and how did we get to this point?
Fantastic. Beeple, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Congratulations. Can't wait to see what you produce next.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Have a good one.
All right, that was graphic artist Beeple. Coming up, taking a look at Ethereum with one of the protocol's co-founders, Anthony Iorio. All right, welcome back. The XBX Bitcoin price right now trading at $55,512. It's down about 2.5%. And the ATX Ether price trading right now at $17.35, down just over 4% over the past 24 hours, according to trade block data. And my next guest is an entrepreneur, angel investor, and co-founder of Ethereum. Joining me now from Toronto is Anthony Iorio, CEO of Jax and Decentral. Welcome, Anthony. Can we get audio from Anthony? Can you hear me, Anthony?
How's that?
Yes.
All right, now we've got you. Excellent. All right, technology. So, our first guest was Michael Winkelmann, the artist Beeple. But from what I understand, he may have gotten his introduction to the NFT scene from you. Is that true? We have an email Mike sent you in October saying, Anthony, hey man, just very recently discovered the NFT scene and remembered our chat way back when. Definitely should have listened to and stuck with this stuff, and potential seems quite obvious to me now. Maybe you should get a commission, Anthony, or what did you tell Beeple way back when?
No, well, first, there's nothing that I did actually help them along the way to what we've done here. Back in 2017, as I was looking for a visual artist to do some background scenes for the closing party of Consensus that we were hosting on the boat cruise in New York City, I stumbled upon Beeple and I reached out to him to maybe do some work for me for that. And along the way, had talked to him about Ethereum and NFTs and the idea about being able to take digital art, something what he was doing, and be able to prove ownership of his works, and maybe there's an opportunity there. It was maybe something that he had known about crypto, but I think the whole NFT scene didn't really went over his head a bit back then. And then I think when he got into it in 2020, that's when he reached back out and, was kind of getting his mind blown with the possibilities. And then we see what he's done now, and it's just good on him for taking what he's done there and just blowing it up into what he's been able to achieve today.
So it sounds like we should CoinDesk should ask for a bit of a commission then if it involved Consensus.
Yeah, so there's that tie-in right there with all three of us.
Synergies comes full
exactly.
circle.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, he sold it for about let's say 41,000 ETH or so. Do you like NFTs?
Personally, I don't find them really cool or sexy, and that's just because it's been a number of years that I've had ideas for NFTs, and physical items is more interesting for me to match them with digital items. Just the digital side of it, to be able to own something digital that I can see. For me, I'm not a collector of something like that because I can just hang it on my wall and have a copy of it. But it's for people that really are into collectibles. And I think the more interesting thing for me is how we can take the digital world and match it with the physical world. So having something physical and then be able to prove ownership of that physical thing with also a token that you can match together and then see the history of it. That's where there's interest to me. And I was an early investor in a product in VeChain, and VeChain has been working on these things for quite a while with partnerships with Louis Vuitton and being able to take handbags and embed a chip in them where you could tap it with an application that proves who owns that device and prove that the actual purse or thing is legitimate and it's not a knockoff. So I find that much more interesting, but this technology as a whole is going to empower artists like Beeple or anybody now that hadn't in the past been able to take their work that's digital and be able to decide or to be able to monetize of it. So it's opening the doors to so many different possibilities for digital ownership. And it's not just of art, it's going to be of music, it's going to be of many different things, anything digital. So it's really, people are understanding that they now have the ability to do something they couldn't do before because everything digital could always be copied. And we saw what it did for music. We saw what it did to democratize information on the internet, which is fantastic. But then Bitcoin comes along, and for the first time ever, you could have something digital that can't be duplicated. And that's really the breakthrough that Bitcoin brought to the world. Is for properties of money, you don't want it to be able to be duplicated, and it's losing the scarcity of things. You can copy it. So starting to see now it's kind of a match between something like Bitcoin and something visual, because the difference here is that it's not the same as Bitcoin. Bitcoin, you can have it, you prove ownership of. No one can have that thing, but something visual is different. So it's going to require a different way of looking at it, because even though I have ownership of something digital like that Beeple thing, someone has it, it's still a visual item that you can still see and anybody can see it and you can take a picture of it. So it has certain properties, but it's kind of going to have to figure out its niche and value in the market. And right now it's just really exciting, I think, for a lot of people. But for me, it kind of, I just don't have I don't find it cool and sexy really. It's because everybody else is getting into it and doing it. So it's interesting, and it's going to really create a lot of value and empower artists and empower creators with digital. And that's kind of the amazing breakthrough that's happening now.
So you were obviously in Ethereum since literally the beginning, and it's come quite a long way. Is the current state of Ethereum, is it basically living up to what your vision was, or are there aspects of it that you find disappointing?
I think whatever it's done is beyond the wildest imaginations that I think we had when we were starting it out. And could it be better? Could it be worse? Both sides. There's no right or wrong. There's no it's good, it's bad. It's where it is right now. There's a lot of competition that's come in. It's done phenomenal things, and I couldn't be more happy and proud to be part of what it is, along with the other thousands of people that have got it to where it is today. So it is where it is, and I wouldn't want anything changed to where it is. And it's going to learn from things, and hopefully it's going to see a lot more competition, which works it towards being better and improving, and that's what innovation is, and that's how things change. So I'm extremely proud and happy of where the project is. Things could have been different, but that's okay. It is where it is, and it's where it should be, I think, right now.
So speaking of improvement, what do you think? What specific improvements do you think you'll need to have next?
It has a lot of developer mindshare. Ethereum has, but then you have new projects coming out like Polkadot that are actually being the same type of thing, where they're really appealing to the developer network. With more competition that comes in, you have to kind of find a way that you're going to continue to stay above the crowd, and I think it's doing that. But I think some of the greatest concerns is the fees. Scalability. When you are the biggest platform out there and you've got scalability always as an issue, that's going to be something on the forefront. And there's just so many competitors and so many other systems that are newer. The older you are, the harder it is for you to change, and the harder it is for you to keep up with what's coming. But you also have a lot of first mover advantage with things. So it's going to keep the struggle up. I think that it still has a really big mind share, and I don't think that's going anywhere. But it's going to have to continue to do things that are keeping up with the competition, and we'll see what it does.
Anthony, some of the co-founders of Ethereum have gone on to create other projects, so-called Ethereum killers. I wonder what your thoughts on those. Do you think that they're better, or do you have a favorite one?
Well, I think there's a lot of projects that have been called Ethereum killers, and they could actually prove to do that. But right now, I don't think there's an Ethereum killer out there. I am, excited with projects that Charles Hoskinson is doing with Cardano and what Gavin Wood is doing with Polkadot, and I have a lot of respect for both of those people. And super smart, super intelligent, learned a lot with Ethereum, and now they're on a mission to make their projects excel and succeed, and probably have something on their shoulders in order to kind of get to where Ethereum is. But there's a number of projects. I don't know what's going to win out. Nobody does right now, and I think there could be multiple projects that do. But I think it's the projects that work together and try to collaborate with others and provide value and complement projects that are going to be the ones that are going to really provide value for many different systems. So with Polkadot, you've got value being created to Ethereum. So the more you can do with your project to create value for others and bring others along and create winning situations for all the projects, I think those are going to be the projects that are going to bring others along and bring competitors along, and showcase that the more you support something that you're doing that's helping others, the more that you're going to do well, the more everybody's going to do well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us and weighing in on an update on Ethereum.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, that was Anthony Iorio, co-founder of Ethereum and CEO of Jax and Decentral. And time to check in with our CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor, Nick Day, who is also the editor of CoinDesk's The State of Crypto newsletter. Hello there, Nick.
Hey, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. What are you tracking today?
So I think the big news this morning is the report that the CFTC is probing Binance to see whether it allowed U.S. customers to trade derivatives products. That is, it's a charge it's brought before. I think earlier on the show, Emily noted that BitMEX got dinged by basically the exact same charge by the CFTC. So this is definitely, this is one of those things that would be a very real concern if there's, any evidence that the CFTC can find. Of course, this also comes a day after Binance hired a former U.S. senator and ambassador to China, Maxwell Baucus, to act as a government liaison and help it navigate U.S. policy and regulators. So, even if Binance hasn't acknowledged it, and I don't know if this timing is coincidental or not, but it sure seems like Binance is taking this idea of cooperating with U.S. regulations, somewhat seriously.
Yeah, I do. Do you think that there's an explicit link between the Baucus announcement and this CFTC thing? Like, do you think that Binance? I know this is kind of speculative, but do you think that Binance had some inkling that this kind of thing would happen, so they brought on somebody very high profile to help them navigate the regulatory world?
If I had to speculate, I think there might be some link. Binance has announced at least twice in the last few years that it's working to remove all U.S. customers from its platform. It's been, it's been a process. It's very possible that Binance was aware that, it would at some point be under the spotlight. And honestly, I'd be surprised if there's any crypto exchange, that ever did business in the U.S. that isn't getting looked at some point. But I imagine that Binance probably had some suspicion that this could be happening. And I think the thing about the senator is that it's not only that he's been high profile on the Senate Finance Committee, but he has been, he's got ties to the current administration. One of his former tax policy chiefs is just named was just nominated to an assistant secretary position at the Treasury Department. So he has the connections and the knowledge, I think, that would help Binance navigate this.
Nick's also having some issues right now, of course, and there's recently a couple of executives have been challenging the government's request to turn over private records. What exactly is going on there?
So I think that's just coming from the discovery process. I imagine that the SEC is going to be saying, "Hey, we definitely want to we want to have or look at whatever data there is or whatever information there is that says, these guys were selling off their holdings and making a profit." And it's I guess the reverse side of that argument is, is this relevant to the specific charges that are being brought? Which is, of course, that's going to be how this plays out, I imagine.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick, for weighing in.
Thank you.
All right. That was CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Policy and Regulation, Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com. And our next guest heads the U.S. operations for one of the largest and oldest crypto exchanges in the industry. Joining us now to discuss the markets is Hunter Merghart, head of U.S. at Bitstamp in New York. Welcome, Hunter.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here at CoinDesk today.
Great to have you. All right. Hunter, we just spoke about BitMEX, Binance getting investigated by U.S. authorities. You're an exchange as well, but is there any concern there about the long arm of the U.S.?
I think Bitstamp is unique in a lot of ways. We're, again, the oldest and longest standing cryptocurrency exchange in the world. We have over 4 million users. And we've embraced regulation really from the earliest days. We were the first exchange in the world to do KYC AML. We were the first exchange in Europe to get an EU license to operate. And we also applied for a BIT license in the US all the way back in 2014. So I think, in terms of other exchanges and how they're thinking about regulation, I never want to speculate, never really want to talk about other folks. But I think our strategy has always been that regulation is coming to crypto. You can either fight it or you can try and work with the regulators to develop a framework that helps the entire industry grow.
Hi, Hunter. We're seeing a lot of exchanges go down during high traffic periods, especially now when more and more people are interested in crypto. What kind of investments have you put into the back end, your servers and such things, so that when more people trade, your site stays online? And how certain are you guys that you can handle that kind of inflow?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something we're really proud of at Bitstamp. During really the bear market, we spent a lot of time and money and investment in building out a brand new matching engine. We partnered with NASDAQ, obviously one of the best exchanges in the world, to be able to build an infrastructure for this bull market, and it's proven itself out. We have the best uptime and I would say best-in-class infrastructure, proven by third-party audits. And I think sometimes you don't hear as much about Bitstamp because we don't have those problems. So I think we're really trying to let people know that if, in times of high volatility, our exchange is up and functioning. And I think it's really been valuable for the institutions that we have on platform. And I think it's, the difference between the bull market in 2017 and now is that you have places like Bitstamp that have strong infrastructure and strong client support to facilitate this new needs for liquidity.
So you have kind of a uniquely global perspective, and just wanted to ask you about institutional investors. One of the main drivers of this bull run is institutional investment and institutional investors getting into the crypto market. And the general idea is that this is kind of being led by the U.S. This is where institutional investment is happening. Are there any other countries where we're seeing institutional investment that could have an impact on the overall global market?
I think, again, people don't talk about Europe as much, and I think crypto tends to be Asia or US focused a lot of the time. But the growth we've seen also in Europe, being, the largest European exchange from the institutional side of the world, is pretty phenomenal as well. There's a lot of, obviously, private banks that are getting interested in crypto. And there's also a lot of B2B2C clients that want to offer crypto, just like, in the US, in Europe, through their front ends. And we've been an amazing infrastructure partner for a lot of those other businesses that are, in our world, we think of as institutional as well. So I think Europe has seen a lot of movement too, and doesn't get talked about much.
What's the breakdown of your own customer base between institutional and retail?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we traditionally, again, have been the largest exchange in Europe, and we have an amazing, and very large retail client base in Europe. The U.S. business traditionally had been mostly institutional focused, but we are making a renewed effort and, doing a lot of marketing, a lot of infrastructure build. We're going to be offering credit cards soon to U.S. clients over the next couple of weeks, which we think will be a differentiator. But our breakdown, again, we don't love to go into specific numbers, but a lot of the volumes we are seeing recently have been institutionally driven out of the U.S. and Europe with a good mix of retail.
Anything particularly interesting? I was going to say, anything particularly interesting in that data that you're finding, other than the breakdown between institutional and retail?
I think we're breaking records every day in terms of new retail sign-ons in the U.S. and in Europe. And U.S. growth at the beginning of this phase actually outpaced our European growth for the first time ever. So I do think from a geographic perspective, it is interesting that, an exchange like Bitstamp is starting to see more growth from the U.S. So I think that's something. Obviously, we're still seeing phenomenal growth out of Europe, but, it is becoming more global in a lot of ways. I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Hunter, just 30 seconds. The Coinbase IPO right now is very popular. I wonder if Bitstamp has any inclinations or interest in going public.
For us, we are doing very well right now. I think we're really happy with the trajectory growth of the business. We've been profitable for a number of years. And so I think for us, we're really focused on our clients and customers and building product and reinvesting in the business. At some point in the future, maybe. But at this point in time, we're focused on the existing business, not necessarily M&A or an IPO.
Thank you so much, Hunter, for joining us this morning and sharing your insights.
Thanks so much for the time, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
You too.
Have a
Take
great
care.
day. All right. That was Hunter Merghart, head of US at Bitstamp. Time now for the tweet of the day in crypto Twitter. This is from MSNBC host Joanne Reed saying, okay, I know I'm out of touch, but what is a Beeple and what's an NFT and why would anyone pay $70 million for one? A lot of people are feeling that way. So
just to watch First Mover. We broke it down.
Yeah, we answered all those questions today.
We answered all those questions. All right, coming up on Monday is special guest Kevin O'Leary, Shark Tank co-host. Thank you, Emily Parker, our CoinDesk Managing Director of International Content, and Lawrence Lewitinn, Managing Editor of Global Capital Markets. I'm your host, Christine Lee. I'll be back live at 3 p.m. with all about Bitcoin. Coming up at noon is The Hash. You're watching CoinDesk TV.